Now, so we have the problem that we're dealing actually not just, I mean, I've called the European Union our enemy, European Union collective, but within the collective is, of course, Germany, and that's the problem. Now, if I had time, I would have told you what I wanted to tell you, which is I wanted to precede what I was going to say with a little scripture lesson. But I'll skip most of it, and I'll just read verse 1 of Psalm 127. Except the Lord build the house, they labour in vain that build it. That's the point. Where is the Lord to be seen in this structure? It is totally aspiritual. It has no spiritual content at all. Excuse me, I'm a father of 4 daughters. We know that it's not just a question of our physical existence. We have a spirit as well. This entity is not connected at all to our spiritual existence because it is of Satan. And I'm absolutely clear about that. There is no question. Psalm 53, verse 1, the fool hath said in his heart, there is no God. Now the point here is, who is the author of lies and confusion? What is the European Union collective but confusion? The successive treaties, which are run every 3 or 4 years, are just updated versions, but if you look at them very carefully, and I know this because I worked with Bill Cash in 1992 against the Maastricht Treaty. At the beginning, sort of paragraph 48, little 1, subsection C, you'll see one statement, and then way down 40 pages later, you've got that contradicted. That is the Soviet technique. That was exactly what happened under the Soviet Constitution. Rights are given, rights are taken away, and so on and so forth. It's the same. And there is an absolute parallel, because if you walk into the European Parliament, which I had privilege to do because I had a friend who is no longer an MEP, but I was there several times. If you walk in there, you can see you are walking into the Supreme Soviet. It's the same design. All they have to do is to remove the blue stars, or the yellow stars on the blue background, and substitute the hammer and sickle. Now, on the corruption point, you will be aware that the accounts of the European Commission have been specifically disapproved by the EU's own Court of Auditors for the past 14 years running. Okay? So this means that the last time that the European Commission had accounts which could be relied upon, quote unquote, was 15 years ago. Now, I've been running my own private company since 1963. If I produce false accounts, excuse me, I think something very serious happens to me. I'll probably get debarred and I may go to jail. These people have been producing false accounts for the last 14 years and no one is paying any attention. I want to draw your attention to the following reality. In order to correct this matter, they have to go back 15 years and they have to look at every single transaction that took place 14 years ago. They have to identify the fraud or anything that was irregular. They have to have that corrected, however that can be done. They have to have the perpetrators reported to law enforcement, and the law enforcement has to proceed with the appropriate measures. That has to happen 14 years ago. Then when they've corrected the 14th year, they go to the 13th year, and so on and so forth, right the way up to the present. Is that going to happen? No way, Jose, it's never going to happen. Okay? That's obvious. Therefore, the European Commission is a criminal enterprise. Now, I have a new Irish friend who's absolutely delightful, called Richard Sharp, with an E. He comes through from Ireland periodically on the way to the continent, because he has to drive. And he does odd jobs for me in Europe, and it's very, very convenient. And about 2 months ago, he said, I'll go to the Court of Auditors and I'll look them up. So he literally did a cold call to the Court of Auditors, which is the EU's so-called auditing entity, in Luxembourg. And he got to see a Mr. Giza Novacs, N-O-V-A-C-S. And Mr. Giza Novacs specifically confirmed, and by the way, I'm mentioning his name so that you know I didn't make this up, okay? You can ring him up and he'll have to confirm that what I've just said is accurate. He confirmed that, yes, the European Commission's accounts have not been approved for the past 14 years. The European Commission is a criminal enterprise. Let me introduce my friend who was set up, by the way, Ashley Moat, MEP, who is a close personal friend and is an absolutely delightful man. He stepped down as MEP for South East England in June. And virtually the last thing he did was to go to see the Serious Fraud Office. Now in 2005, he had previously been to see the Serious, I think it may have been 2006, he'd previously been to see the Serious Fraud Office with 2 large files, copies of which I hold. These files contain detailed allegations of criminal fraud committed by at least one enterprise, and I think there are several, which are registered in England and Wales, which did or do business with the European Commission. The European Commission awarded 53 further contracts to this entity, notwithstanding the fact that it had been caught in fraudulent activities. So Ashley compiled all this information with a lot of other stuff and presented it to the Serious Fraud Office. He knew that nothing would happen, and he had TV cameras and journalists outside, and lo and behold, he was given the brush off. But almost his last job before leaving was to do the same thing all over again. And on this occasion, he was given a very high-level interview with a man called Paul Craig. I mention the name for the same reason as I mentioned Mr. Novak's name, so that if anybody has any problems here, they can ring up the Serious Fraud Office and speak to Paul Craig and ask him whether what Kристофър Стори just said and what Ashley Moat says on his website is true or false. Well, of course it's true. Now what happened was, at the end of the 3-hour discussion, Ashley Moat, which is typical of him, said, "Have I been wasting my time here today?" Paul Craig, no. Ashley Moat, is it a criminal offence to pass public money to an organisation known to be corrupt? Paul Craig, yes. Right. The Serious Fraud Office has agreed that taxpayers' money should not be handed to a criminal enterprise. Excuse me? What this means is that the Serious Fraud Office has been told that funds belonging to the taxpayer are being handed to a criminal enterprise, because that's one of the subjects that Ashley raised with him on this occasion. The Serious Fraud Office is supposed to be engaged in rooting out serious fraud, but it's not doing its job. Now, it's worse than that. It gets worse. And the reason it's worse is that the British government is handing over your money, our VAT money, to a criminal enterprise. But excuse me, the Serious Fraud Office has stated that this is a criminal offence. It therefore follows not only that the European Commission is a criminal enterprise indefinitely because it cannot correct its accounts, it also follows that the British government is engaged in defrauding you, the taxpayer, on an ongoing basis and will continue to do so. The British government is engaged in criminal fraud. It is a co-conspirator and an accessory to the fact of handing over British taxpayers' money to a criminal enterprise. This is ludicrous. It needs to be dealt with. Now, I have a solution to this. There's a very easy solution. And the solution, I've got 2 minutes and it just fits perfectly. The solution is that the VAT money should, by administrative fiat of the government, be redirected to a special account at the Treasury. Do we need to tell Brussels this? No. Wouldn't bother to tell them. What I would do is just reallocate the funds into the Treasury. After all, they've got a certain financial problem, have they not? These funds are not insubstantial. Within 3 years, the Treasury's problems will be finished. For that reason alone, 15, 20 billion will be very happily received at the Treasury. Okay, that's not enough, but never mind. Now, all they have to do is to have the funds redirected. If Brussels gets uptight, the Treasury says, well, your accounts have not been in order for the last 14 years. We have been advised that it's a criminal offence for us to forward funds to you. We have ceased to do so. What's your problem? Now, finally, the Treasury could say, if the Treasury wants to be nice to the Germans, which I don't think is a good idea, but they want to be nice to the Germans, you can say, look, we'll give you 2 years to put your accounts, to get Brussels to put its accounts right. You've got 2 years, and at the end of 2 years, if it's not right, the Treasury annexes the funds in perpetuity, but I wouldn't even give them that. I would just rechannel the money straight away so that the British government is no longer committing fraud against you, the taxpayer, and so that we are no longer paying our taxes into the hands of a criminal enterprise. Thank you very much.